Hi, Niki. Welcome to Kaffeine Karrots. How are you?
I'm good, thank you, Anshi. How are you?
All well. Thank you so much. So, quick introduction to Niki. She's pretty known in CS space anyways. She has been a top 200 CS leaders. Plus, she's also the founder of ThinkNet, which is a CS community in Singapore. So, I anyways have been interacting with Niki quite often, and I thought it's good to have her and discuss on the subject, which we all kind of are working towards these days, is how CS should strengthen their skill, both as an individual as well as from our perspective. So we can begin there. So the first thing, I'll keep it open-ended, is what do you think are the top skills for CSMs that they should focus on to strengthen, bring strength in their roles?
Yeah, good question. Obviously, there's a lot of skills generally a CS person needs to have, but I'd say I'll kind of round it up to the top 5. So I'd say empathy is obviously always key, because it's being able to kind of, I suppose, really talk to our customers, understand their needs and also sometimes their issues, and to be able to kind of relay that back to the business. Time management is definitely paramount, I would say, just because we generally get a lot of things that we have to do in a day, and it's being able to kind of prioritize and know what to put what first. Obviously, interpersonal skills, there's lots of collaboration internally with other teams, from sales to support to, the technical side of things, from product. So that's definitely another skill. Relationship management is definitely something you will develop if you don't already have it. And it's and that's from both from an external, meaning the customer relationship development, but also internally. And when I say internally, I don't just mean with the other teams that you'll be working with, but also with your own team and your own leaders. So that's a definite thing that you'll need to develop. And I would say the final one, but like I said, there's many more, but the final one that I would say is problem solving, because generally day-to-day CS is, it's a support ticket issue, or it's, something not working for a customer, or it could be something wrong with their billing or anything at all. It's generally like, how do we solve the problem? And we don't always have a fix. Sometimes it's a temporary solution. So being able to kind of articulate that to the customers is very important, and to be able to kind of put forward a solution is also key.
Wonderful. And I'm glad to hear that all these are not like a technical skill set, more on the personality and your attitude that you build towards managing stuff. So I like that. One thing that actually I have not been able to discuss with anyone rather, is how much importance do we give to skills around business understanding? And I'll tell you why I come from, because everybody says CSMs have to be trusted advisor to their customers, they have to bridge the gap. But then if you do not understand your customer's business, it's really hard for you to bridge that gap. And you may know your product, your solution very well, but how will you bridge that gap? So how do you think they can actually come up with knowledge around business?
So we're talking like general business, or do you mean their customer's business?
So customers' business, and it can vary. So I would perhaps think that a basic understanding of how businesses run, how this specific department that they deal with would have their business KPIs defined, something on those lines.
Yeah, for sure. So for me, that's always down to the company. Companies need to have a really good, when you take any new person on, they should have a really good onboarding program. And that's not just to kind of allow the person to understand like the business goals, or the company's OKRs, KPIs, MBOs, whatever it is that you get targeted with, and to make sure that you fully understand that, and that there is some form of, because I suppose there's 2 prongs to most people coming into an organization. One is understanding the product side of things and the kind of the technology, as well as learning the business kind of requirements and KPIs and all that kind of stuff. So there needs to be, hopefully, an onboarding program that kind of copes with the internal stuff, which is generally the user side of things. But the way I've kind of dealt with it in companies is, is about, making sure that there's like a mentor or a buddy that kind of helps you develop those skills that you need for your particular role, so that you understand like how do you kind of talk to the customers, how do you, and that's around kind of like shadowing and doing that kind of stuff. But like understanding your customers, in some companies you actually specialize. So like you might have a vertical that you focus on, like security, or it could be streaming information. It could be anything, above and beyond. But it just depends on, I suppose, how the organization is structured. But ideally, you kind of have to push back on the company and kind of say, like, I need training on this, and hopefully your leader or your manager will be able to kind of identify where your skills lie and where there are kind of areas for improvement.
Wonderful, wonderful. And I think that is what will kind of level it for the CSMs and the entire team as well. If companies are not supporting that, it might be hard. Fair enough. So one question now, since we talked about all these skills that are needed, how do you suggest that, and we all know that CSMs are too occupied in their roles because it requires multi-skills plus the dynamics that is around that. How do CSMs continually enhance their skills, one or the other, or how do they eventually grow?
Yeah, good question. So I'm someone that's a true believer of being connected in your wider community. So definitely reach out to, and the good thing about customer success is we have a very large global reach, and everyone is super helpful and willing to help and mentor and coach and train and do all this good stuff and share all the knowledge and the pains that we've already been through to kind of help them elevate to the next level. But also learn from your fellow CSMs. If you have someone in your team that is better at doing something than you, ask to shadow with them or ask them to walk you through stuff. And also learn from your customers as well, because, every customer also probably most likely nowadays, especially if in the SaaS space, they'll have a CSM team as well. So you could even ask to kind of reach out to some of their teams to understand more things like what are their challenges with the products. And so just to kind of, I suppose, bridge gaps in some of your knowledge. But just talk to your customers in general, because they'll be able to give you lots of stuff too. But ideally, you do always want to go back to your manager as well. And if you do find that there is something really missing, that you kind of bring it to the company, because if there's something that as a new person that you're finding is not there, then it's probably something the company should address too.
Right. And again, I know there are a lot of courses and certifications, short ones, longer ones, very comprehensive ones that are around. So, and I'm sure they have immense value. But then obviously it comes to the cost, and not all organizations will support that or will be able to fund that. So do you suggest that any small part of that or anything that is on the MOOC community, the open courses that they have, basis the strength and weaknesses that CSMs can, or at a group level, organizations can plan for them? What kind of courses or certifications they can help them with? Or it's not really about the certificate, it's really about enhancing the skill. So do you think any resources are there available that are not so cost intensive?
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of platforms. Generally, most companies, the ones that I've kind of been with, there's platforms like, LinkedIn Learning that most companies have some form of a license to, or Udemy, and there are a few others, but most companies have some form of a kind of external platform that you can tap into that have lots more training about those soft skills that you kind of need to develop to, progress into management or leadership, or even just general skills around things like presenting, being more confident when talking to customers, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, there are things out there. I mean, there is always a slight cost, but I think those ones, if a company has a license for them, they're probably less costly than having like an external trainer come in.
It generally came to me because we are trying to get a few certifications, not in the CS, but outside of CS. Folks are very interested in doing some certifications. So I'm trying to tell them, we can try other areas as well, instead of really going and getting a certification, which is highly cost intensive. But that's fair.
So there's peer-to-peer learning. So I'm sorry to kind of cut there. There's peer-to-peer learning, which I'm a strong believer of, which is obviously learning from people that internally you've identified as a subject matter expert. So kind of just adding on to that. So generally what I do with most of my teams is I create some form of a skills matrix. So identifying the key attributes, soft skills, product skills, and all the kind of information that I expect the team to kind of have knowledge on. And then I get them to rate themselves or score themselves kind of between 1 to 4, 1 to 5 in terms of where they feel in terms of the confidence level. And obviously there'll be a criteria of how those are kind of worked out. And then anyone that kind of scores 4 means that they class themselves as an SME. And then what I do is, get them to do the peer-to-peer learning with each other and kind of, I suppose, upskilling your co-workers. And then it also helps me as a leader identify like where are their knowledge gaps? Like, do I need to get someone internally to give more product training on certain products? is there a big gap in a soft skill that we really don't have internally? And then I can kind of then go up and ask the powers that be, like, can we have budget to kind of do that external training? Or if there is an Udemy or a LinkedIn Learning kind of course that we can kind of tap into to kind of upskill the team, that's also another kind of thing that you can do in terms of identifying those gaps and trying to bridge those skill sets.
Lovely. I really like that peer-to-peer training and the way we can identify the strengths and weaknesses of each. So actually, my follow-up question was on the same lines. So how do you suggest leaders should balance the skills in the team? Because not every person can have all the skills that a CS role needs. So how do they balance it across the team?
That's a good question. I think it's always a difficult one too, because not everyone's wonderful at everything, and that the world would be a boring place if everyone was. But I think for me, the key thing I've always tried to do is, not focus on everyone's weaknesses, identify the weaknesses. But I always find that people excel more if you focus on their strengths, because to basically become better at all your weaknesses will take far too long than to focus on your strengths and become even better at those things. So it's once you've identified the strengths, is kind of elevating those people to kind of do those things that elevate those strengths more, versus and then you try and find, so depending on what the need is for the customer or whatever it is, but it's trying to find that balance and like, hey, this person's good at this, so let's get them doing that more. And oh, look, this person's doing this project, but we know this person over here is good at it, so why don't we get them to work with them to kind of help bridge that gap. And again, that kind of unintentional peer-to-peer learning then becomes a thing, and then you see people gradually learn without you kind of going, oh, you're not really good at this, so we're just going to take you off the project. It's more, let's bring someone in that can help you, that's really good at this, and then you can kind of see how, and they can lead the way. So that's generally how I've kind of done it in terms of where people are strong and where they have strengths and where they have weaknesses. Like, like I said, would be in education forever if we had to try and make all our weaknesses strengths.
Absolutely. So if I extend it slightly further and balancing within the team, as you suggest, the skills, how does it work when we have to align with customers? So organizations will have enterprise customers, SMB customers, different verticals, different geographies, and CSMs also, as we know, may have different experience levels, different skill set. So how best do you think we can align it with the customers?
Again, I think that also comes down to company and product and the personas that you're trying to basically sell into or work with. Lots of companies, some companies do a really good job of actually doing persona training, and they try and kind of give you the ideas and the information that, so say, for example, if you're talking to someone in CSEC, so like security, like what those personas would be interested in, what sort of things that they would actually want to talk about, like keywords, metrics that they'd be interested in, the types of things that are top of mind for them in terms of like in the industry, what's happening at the minute. So any company that's kind of good at giving persona information to the CS organization is generally on the right track, just because, we do have lots of customers. Some do the thing where they split by vertical. So you'll have like a security, I don't know, APM, for example, front office, that kind of thing. But like if you don't, it's all about kind of giving the CSMs as much information as possible about their verticals, because obviously the product team are building stuff for those verticals, so they have the kind of knowledge. So being able to really drain that knowledge from the product team to kind of go, hey, what do we need? Like if you're building it, what do you look for? Like what are the things you want to talk to someone about, and trying to get that knowledge and kind of pass it down, and that tends to kind of work.
Interesting. Oh, fair enough. So again extending on the same of lines of skill building, continually enhancing the skills, managing the skills across the team, aligning it with the customers. Key thing that comes here is we all know that usually L&D is HR teams or L&D teams owners. So while a CSM as an individual is really focusing on enhancing his or her skills, CS leaders are really trying to do that peer-to-peer training, find the right skills, get the right things. How do you suggest HR can also play a role here, not only in just providing resources, but also really tracking the progress of the entire team?
HR, again, there's tools that HR generally uses, and we as leaders tap into. It could be something from Workday or something along those lines, and they do have areas where you can actually put like skills and people that people have. But I think it generally comes down to, in terms of HR in particular, is making sure they hire the right people as well, because that's the worst thing that you get. You go into a company that's super technical, and the CSM, and again, it kind of comes back to CSMs, like what type of CSMs does that company need? Because CSM has now got a broad spectrum. So you'll have like a technical CSM, an onboarding, CSM specialist, you'll have a renewals CSM specialist, that kind of thing. So it depends on what the organization themselves want to achieve. So if, for example, someone that's more of a service-centric CSM goes into somewhere that's super technical and their previous role was not technical at all, and it's kind of just like a one product, one offering, and that was good for them. I'm not saying they can't transition to the technical, but it's just to make sure that they're aware that it will be super technical, and just, I suppose, making sure there's transparency in terms of what the requirements will be for that kind of new role. So that's where HR, I suppose, would step in and make sure that they're kind of, I suppose, being open and honest with the candidates, and also trying to vet people that have some sort of skill set, so it's not too much of a transition, and it's not too hard, because along with because obviously there's two prongs, like I said, to the learning streak, which is product, and if it's super technical, that will take a lot of your time, and you'd only have about 3 to 6 months to get up the curve, and then the other side is the soft skills, which hopefully most CSMs will have most of the soft skills, but yeah, there's that technical piece that will really kind of get you, depending on whether, like I said, if you are a commercial CSM, like being able to pitch that product, and if you don't understand that product, it becomes a really hard slog, I suppose.
I really liked the way you brought up that CS can have different requirements itself. Somebody in some organization or in some regions, it can be technical CS, or it can be service-oriented CS, or it can be more business-oriented, more high-touch, low-touch. So I really like that you brought this point, and this actually brings me to the extension, a follow-up question to the prior question. Now we are anyway seeing there are a lot of CSMs looking out for a job. So how do you suggest in any organization lateral movement can happen in and out of CS? So what all other roles folks, in what departments folks should aspire to be in CS, because there may be some fitment, and if somebody wants to try something beyond CS, then what are the kind of roles that they can get into?
Yeah, again, when, like, if you come from a, say, for example, let's focus on CSMs moving out of CS. So again, depending on if your role was technical, whether it was commercial. So if you were technical, for example, you could probably move into a technical account manager role, so a TAM role, so post-sales kind of support and enablement. If your role was more kind of commercial, I haven't seen it done, but I definitely know it could be done, because I've seen the kind of level the CSMs and they perform when they're account managers. So again, account management could be a route that they go down, or working as an AE even. So there's definitely lots of avenues. Someone coming into CS, I would say, if, again, kind of, I suppose, a full circle. So if you've done account management, it would definitely be very useful, because you would have kind of had that expertise in developing relationships. If you're like a consultant or an architect, maybe going in as a technical CSM would be something really, really cool for you to move into, just because you'd have that kind of working on site with customers, developing those relationships, but also have that technical element. But I suppose there's also an undergrounding, because even though I kind of gave you the skills earlier, there's also an undergrounding, I suppose, characteristics or a personal trait that I think CSM should have and should build on, which is grit. And just not just even just as a CSM, but just in life in general. If you have grit, you're generally going to go a lot further, because it's going to get tough. There's going to be times when you think things are never ending and impossible, but you just got to keep going. And there is light at the end of the tunnel, and you'll either end up with a super happy customer or kind of a half fixed solution for the customer, a workaround. But yeah, just keep going, like, having that determination and that kind of perseverance. I think you'll always kind of do well in the long run. And I think we all need a bit of grit at the minute, given the current climate. So
I like the optimism and the positivity that you bring here. So that's wonderful. But one last question, and it might be slight repeat, but then whosoever would be the audience and would be listening to this, I want them one key takeaway as a CSM, that regardless where they are in their career, regardless where they are in their job stance at this point, or regardless if they're looking out or they have just been hired, what is at least one or two specific nuances of CS that they should continue to focus on without compromising on that?
I suppose it would be kind of making connections and relationship development. Reach out to your network. If you've been one of those unfortunate people that's been laid off, reach out to your network, talk to people, get connected, be an active participant in the community. What can go wrong if we're talking to more people and building a better network. And also talk to some of your customers as well. The people that you work for that you had a really good relationship with, they may have opportunities as well. So just making sure that you're kind of engaged, and stay positive.
Great. So wonderful, Niki. It was lovely talking to you. But before we end, I want to make one correction. The community that Niki has initiated in Singapore is thinksuccess.net. I think I did not say the right name initially. So for everyone who is listening, it's thinksuccess.net. Maybe we will catch up in Singapore all together very soon.
That'd be awesome.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for your time, Niki. Have a great day.
Thank you so much, Anshi.